So in 2026, the total budget for the Department of Veterans Affairs, which includes VHA and VBA, Veterans Health Administration, Veterans Benefits Administration, for the fiscal year of 2026, it's approximately $441.2 billion. Billion with a B. That's a lot of money. So where does it all go? Let's talk about that today. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Watch this video all the way through. There's some good information in this video. I know that it seems a little geeky to talk about where does all the money go, but as a veteran, you should really pay attention to this because it does affect us, and we should know where all this money is going. It's our money. Okay, so there are two types of funding that are included in a budget for the federal government, specifically for the Department of Veterans Affairs, okay? And that is mandatory funding, which pays for most benefits, and then discretionary funding, which pays for ops, healthcare staff, facilities, vans, transportation, all that stuff, right? Those are considered discretionary. We're gonna break it up. We're gonna talk about mandatory funding first. I'm gonna give you some highlights of where all your money's going. And then we're going to talk about the discretionary funding as well. So let's jump right into it. Mandatory funding. It accounts for the bulk of the budget. I've got notes down here in case you haven't noticed. Primarily covering benefits that are required by law, regardless of annual appropriations. And we're going to get into what each one of these are. The total mandatory funding budget out of the $441 billion is $301.2 billion. That's a 12.8 increase compared to fiscal year 2025. All right. So there are things that have changed a little bit in there, and you'll see that inside that 12.8% increase in that $301.2 billion, things have moved around, right? Some of the budget has gone bigger over here and some of it not so much bigger over here. But overall, 12.8% more than 2025, and that's a lot of money, okay? This is why people are questioning the budgeting for the VA so much. This is why there are folks out there saying we should stop spending all this money on our veterans, which I'm just gonna tell you, I think that's bullcrap, okay? I think that veterans have earned this benefit. It's part of our package. Deal with it, right? So let's go into the mandatory funding areas. First, we got compensation and pensions, CMP. That is your disability payment. That's your pension, VA pension, right? The fiscal year 2026 request was for $227.2 billion, which is a 6.9% increase over 2025. And the impact here is that this funds disability compensation for an estimated 7+ million veterans and survivors. Don't forget, we pay for survivors as well, which is a good thing. It includes the 2.8 COLA, cost of living adjustment, increase for all benefit programs starting in December of 2025. Ironically, that's when I'm filming this. So if anything changes between now and then, I get to refilm this. Lucky me. All right. Next, now that's $227.2 billion. That is the chunk of $301.2 total. So next is the Toxic Exposures Fund, the TEF, and that's $52.7 billion, which is a 73.1% increase for total mandatory and discretionary toxic exposures since 2025. And I think what's happening is that the massive increase for this is PACT Act, okay? We as a country, the VA, as an organization, as a government entity, has decided finally, a billion years after Vietnam, to cover Agent Orange. Gee, imagine that, right? But also to expand a little bit on the things that are covered in the PACT Act for those of us, like myself, that are Gulf War veterans, right? So it's the money is to cover the cost of care and disability compensation for toxic exposed veterans. So if you have a toxic screening, it has probably been pulled some from that fund and then your regular disability from another fund. It's interesting because the cost is projected to more than double from $30.4 billion in fiscal year 2025 to $52.7 billion in fiscal year 2026. And personally, I think that's because it's about time, and that all of our veterans out there, all of our fellow veterans out there need to be getting their PACT Act claims in quickly. And, for your Gulf War presumptives, for your Gulf War veterans, get those in as well. All right. I'm just saying, if they're going to take money away, just be prepared for them to take money away. Okay. And I don't know where it's going to come from, but some of that 52.7 is a 73% increase, like I said, from 2025, but it's the total for mandatory and discretionary in that case. So I think personally, what I expect will happen is there will be some guy with Coke bottle glasses, a bean counter, that's sitting at a desk somewhere, and what he's telling you is, oh, well, 52.7 billion is a total. We're going to say 52 billion of that is discretionary. We're going to pull it all away. So get your claims in, get locked in. You'll be grandfathered in for the most part. The VA's done a pretty good job at grandfathering people in once they're in a certain, category. So, okay. And then lastly, readjustment benefits, $20.4 billion, which is an 11.5% increase. So remember, the overall is a 12.8% increase, but the funds have been moved around quite a bit, right? The readjustment benefits primarily funds the post 9/11 GI Bill, okay? Other educational and training programs, such as voc rehab, etc., that supports over 1.1 million trainees per year. So $20 billion for 1.1 million trainees, that's a lot, right? So let's just cover a real quick overview of the mandatory spending. The growth in mandatory benefits, especially driven by the PACT Act, is the primary reason that the VA budget is at a historic high, right? $52.7 billion for TEF just highlights how big the PACT Act is. And I would hope that you would jump in on that if you're affected by it. All right, let's talk about discretionary funding. Discretionary funding is healthcare and operations. I know, sounds funny that discretionary funding is for healthcare. Do you see anything wrong with this picture? Because I do. Okay. Total discretionary funding request is $134.6 billion. That's a 4% increase over fiscal year 2025. So again, we're up higher, up higher, up higher. Let's go over the areas. There's a few extras of these down here that I kind of want to go over, and I want to cover the stats with you. So VA Healthcare System, the VHA, Veterans Healthcare Administration, has approximately $165.1 billion total for healthcare. $165.1 billion, which is a 17% increase from 2025 for total healthcare. That's a major increase. And I think what's happening is more people are signing up for VA benefits. More people are qualified for health care now because they're getting their PACT Act benefits, and they're going in and they're saying, hey, wait a minute, I can get health care. And to be honest and to be completely fair, a lot of us from the first Gulf War are getting older. We're starting to get sick. We're starting to see some effects that we didn't know were going to happen. And I think there's some people out there that have some really, really horrible effects from what happened in Desert Storm and Southern Watch and SHIELD and all that stuff, right? So I think that that's really driving a lot of stuff. But the Veterans Healthcare System is estimated to treat 7.5 million unique patients and manage $162.6 million outpatient visits in 2026 alone. That's a ton of healthcare cost. I'm a little bit taken aback that it's not more than that we're putting towards veterans healthcare. I believe veterans healthcare needs to have more money put into it, but hey, wait a minute, there's a reason we're not putting it all in the VHA, and that's the next discretionary funding area, and that is VA medical community care. I'm gonna get me a drink real quick. So we've all heard a lot about community care lately. Community care is private community providers, right? They're not at the VA facility, they're not at the clinic, they're private providers. And we keep being pushed more and more to that direction, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing, but it's going to be a major shift in how things are done, right? And so VA medical community care is now taking $34 billion in 2026 budgeting, which is a 50.7% increase, 50.7% increase. Now you can tell there is an extreme focus on community care. And personally, I don't mind that. Now, I live near a VA clinic. I live near a VA hospital. I can get to them within 45 minutes on a medium traffic day, right? But some people live 4 hours from one. And if they can't get to one of these and they're told, you're just not going to have care, I personally, for my veteran brothers and sisters, that's bullcrap. You should be able to go to a private community care doctor. And I believe that if we start pushing community care into those areas first and then close the gap and pull it back into the major hub areas, I think we're going to do some good there, right? So that's just my opinion. A lot of people say that community care is going to ruin the VA. I just have a hard time understanding that, right? So VA medical community care, the key impact is that it's a significant increase to fund care for the core veterans out there who are at private community providers, right? This ensures timely access. This gets as the demand from all these PACT Act claims that come in, and these Gulf War claims that come in, the presumptives. It's partially related to that, quite honestly. We need to be able to treat those who are, like I said, in rural areas and can't get to the VA maybe. Maybe they don't have the funds, the means. Maybe it's just too far of a drive. Quite honestly, they still need to be cared for and taken care of. So that's what community care is going to help solve. Okay, so next is medical services, which is the VA facilities. We talked about healthcare, the healthcare system, right? The medical community care, which is private doctors. Medical services is the VA facilities. That's $57.1 billion. Now, I want you to take a complete note here that I'm going to go over the community care numbers with you again, and then we're going to talk about the medical services, the VA facilities, okay? Community care, $34 billion, which is a 50.7% increase over 25. Medical services, which is the VA facilities, is $57.1 billion, which is a 17.4% decrease since 2025. And the reason why is less VA facilities, more community care. You can see it starting to branch out already. Like I said, the decrease in the medical services is because it's offset by the increases that are going into community care and TEF medical services for Toxic Exposure Fund. The TEF medical services sees a massive 197.6% increase to $35.4 billion. So the toxic exposures, specifically when they started pulling in Agent Orange and all the effects of that, and then getting further deeper and deeper into the harm that was caused, not just Vietnam, but also in the Gulf War, we're starting to see toxic exposure get wildly crazy in the VA. It kind of frightens me a little bit because I feel like at some point they're going to put a cap on it and say, well, yeah, we did what we did. That's all we could do. But that hasn't happened yet. Don't quote me on that. I'm just giving you my opinion, right? So, all right. So that's medical services. Then you've got the electronic health record modernization. EHRM. This is one of my favorite things in the world, and I'll tell you why in a minute. $3.5 billion, which is a 164.5% increase. This increase is to drive the acceleration. In other words, to speed up and clean up the troubled EHR system rollout. Now, I'm an IT person, okay? When I read troubled EHR system rollout, I read that program sucked, didn't work, ran into more issues than they wanted to count with it. So here we are dumping $3.5 billion more to get it back on track. It shows a renewed commitment to its completion, despite the horrible rollout that it's already been in. But honestly, when are we going to see the end of this? Quite honestly, I think that this should be the last year that we're going to go through this. I know there's a lot of health records out there, but there's a lot of hospital systems out there. There's a lot of medical companies. There's insurance companies. All these people have billions of dollars that they dump into electronic health records. Why is it taking the VA so long to do it? It just doesn't make any sense to me as an IT person who sees projects like this get rolled out all the time. Okay, so thanks for attending my TED Talk. Okay. Construction and infrastructure. This is in addition to the VA facilities. Construction and infrastructure, $3 billion. For major projects, that's a 94.6% increase. And a focus on major projects for new facility construction and modernization. I hope that they are spending more money on modernization than new facilities when you've already slashed funding for the VA medical services, which is the facilities. Upgrade the ones that are out there, would you? Just stop building new ones, give those to community care, and modernize the ones that we have. We're obviously not going to get rid of those. Some of those hospitals are great. The one in Oklahoma City, great. I've had no problems with that place. Now, is it been under construction since the day I started going there? Yes. Is it still under construction? Yes. Everything around there is under construction, but it's down by the Capitol. It is surrounded by other medical care systems. It's a great place to go get care. However, it is so outdated and it needs to be modernized, and all of their systems need to be modernized. And I can see that personally when I go into the building. So I hope they spend all their money on that instead of saying, we're going to build a new location. When you really don't need one, you need more community care. Again, my opinion, what do I know? And lastly, God, I hate this. Homelessness programs, Brave Act proposal, $1.1 billion. It's a new proposal for the budget for 2026. I don't hate that. But this focuses on a new bridging rental assistance plan for veterans empowerment. That's what BRAVE stands for. Bridging rental assistance for veteran empowerment. It's rental assistance to reduce veteran homelessness. Personally, I am going to say that this needs to be rolled up into some of the education. I'm going to say take the $1.1 billion. We're not going to solve homelessness by giving people rental assistance without providing them education to go and get a good, sustainable job. Okay? Whether it be being a painter, an electrician, a lawyer, an IT professional, a chef, ditch digger, I don't care. But these folks that are homeless veterans They need to get cleaned up if they're, substance abusers. We need to get them cleaned up, get them back on track, a lot of them need mental health care. And quite honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's get them some freaking help. And then let's get them back into sustainable life. Veterans were taught to be productive. We were taught to be accountable. And once we get out, all that crap goes away. Some of these veterans just didn't know how to handle it. And then you add the mental anguish of some of the things that they've seen and done. And then you add the mental anguish of, I used to be in this brotherhood of veterans and now I'm not. And nobody can tell what's going on in my head because nobody really friggin' knows. There's other veterans out there. Reach out and ask for some help, man. Seriously. Or lady, but seriously, ask for help. Because we got to get our crap together. It's horrible. Okay? Homelessness needs to be addressed, but I think it needs to be combined. That rental assistance needs to be combined with education. We need to get training for these folks, get them out, find companies that are willing to hire those who have been disadvantaged by the system or disadvantaged themselves through the system. And we need to get them back to work, man. Give them some dignity. Give them some self-respect. So, all right, so anticipated patients. The VA expects to treat, like I said before, 7.5 million veterans. The staffing, the budget proposes to fund 455,874 full-time positions, which is a slight decrease from 2025 because they're going to focus a little bit on community care here and there. The VA is betting on efficiency improvements. This is a point of concern for a lot of VSOs, a lot of veteran service organizations, the DAV, the American Legion, VFW, those. The VA betting on efficiency improvements is kind of like saying military intelligence. You can roll dice and get more accuracy, quite honestly, a lot of the time. And betting on efficiency does not mean efficiency will happen if we don't have checks and balances in place in the dang budget, in the rules, in the guidelines, in the project management to make sure that our money is spent the right way. That's the only way we're going to get efficiencies. Other than that, we're just going to slush fund the crap out of this thing one more time. I'm a little bit heated about this. Budgeting makes me ticked off. The fiscal year 2026 budget reveals several top-level priorities. PACT Act implementation, it's the number one driver of the increase, quite honestly. The mental health and suicide prevention, again, triple that up. Education, rental assistance, mental health and suicide prevention. Put all those in one big bucket and give it some more damn money. Seriously. Infrastructure investment. I really hope that they are just repairing and modernizing facilities, because if they're building new ones and trying to push community care, it's kind of like taking extra money and throwing it out there for no damn reason whatsoever. And then the big shift in healthcare, quite honestly, is trying to get to community care. I really hope that we get much more community care in the future. Now, I will say that there's been a 50.7% increase in community care funding. And the decrease in the VHO funding, I really think they need to grow that community care network. And I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know where they're going to find a lot of these healthcare providers and insurance companies healthcare providers, not insurance companies, but healthcare providers who want to negotiate rates yet again, go through and get VA healthcare rates, etc. I just don't know. I don't know the underlying numbers. Maybe I need to look into that a little bit more. But man, I really hope that we get to the point where at community care where I can go to the doctor that I want to go to, that I've trusted for years before I moved everything over to VA healthcare, and then go to the same doctor as my family. Quite honestly, a lot of veterans can't go to the same doctor as their family. We go to the VA doctor and our families go somewhere else. Man, we got to fix this. It's broken. But anyways, hey, if you've stuck around all the way to the end, tell me what you think of where the $441 billion is going. I appreciate you sticking around, And we'll talk some more about budget here soon, but we'll get back onto the benefits and disability as well. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to take care of one another. See ya.